Israel is stopping Air Force personnel from traveling abroad because of fears that an attack from Iran or one of its allies is imminent. Defense Minister Yoav Gallant said Israel is in a state of vigilance and preparedness. Tensions have been mounting in the Middle East over the killings of leading members of the Hamas and Hezbollah militant groups. A public announcement by the United States that it is sending a submarine, warships, and fighter jets to bolster Israel's defense is being seen as a warning to Iran. And Middle East analyst Giorgio Cafiero joins me now from Washington, D.C. He is the CEO of Gulf State Analytics, a risk assessment group. Welcome to DW. We have not yet seen Iran's promised retaliation for those assassinations of Hamas political leader Haniyeh in Tehran and a senior Hezbollah commander in late July. Do you think that this is now imminent?
Thank you. Good to be on your program. I would have a very difficult time imagining the Iranians not retaliating, considering that two very high-ranking figures in the Iran-led axis of resistance were killed last month. And of course, the killing of the Hamas leader in the heart of the Iranian capital was so humiliating. The leadership in Tehran definitely wants to establish what we often call, quote unquote, deterrence capacity. So I do think there is going to be some sort of an action from Iran or other actors in the axis of resistance, but I'm not so convinced that it will necessarily come so soon. I think Tehran will be acting cautiously. They certainly don't want to do something that would give Israel justification for escalating this to a much higher level. And I think the Iranians are also quite content to see everyone on edge and certainly to see the Israelis very nervous. So again, I definitely expect some sort of an Iranian response, but I don't think there's any reason to assume that it's going to come at some point in the immediate future.
Now, Germany's Chancellor Olaf Scholz has spoken to Iran's new president, Masoud Pezeshkian, and called for restraint. Will that have any effect on the Iranian leadership, you think?
I don't think so. In light of the Europeans responding to the way in which the U.S. sabotaged the nuclear deal back in 2018, it left the Iranians viewing the Europeans as completely spineless, unable to stand up to Washington. Then also the conflict in Ukraine has heightened tensions between Western European countries and Iran, and then also everything in the Middle East since October 7th have led to further deterioration of ties between most EU members and Iran. I don't think Germany really has much influence here. Let's keep in mind, Germany has been a staunch supporter of Israel throughout this conflict. I just don't see the leadership in Germany really saying anything that's going to have much of an effect on Iran, to be entirely honest.
And what about the United States thinking on this? Are you surprised to see them deploying a guided missile submarine to the region?
No, not at all. I think obviously the United States is trying to send a message to Israel and also all of Israel's adversaries in the region that Washington is going to have Israel's back no matter what happens. And if these hostilities spiral out of control and turn into a full-fledged war in the Middle East, I'm positive the United States will go all in to support Israel, and this flexing of military muscles is about sending that message out to friend and foe.
Now, just before I let you go, I'd like to turn briefly to the Gaza ceasefire talks brokered by the U.S., Qatar, and Egypt that we are expecting to take place on Thursday. Hamas has now rejected an invitation to a final round of negotiations. Do you see any hope for these talks?
I'm not extremely optimistic about these high-stakes talks set for later on this week. Late last month, presumably it was Israel that assassinated the lead Hamas negotiator. You have to certainly consider how that makes Hamas look at the idea of negotiating with Israel in a different way. And also the new Hamas chief, Sinwar, is a lot less flexible than his predecessor. He's much more of a hardliner. He will be taking more maximalist positions as the Hamas chief, and I think it's going to be much harder with these new conditions, this new leadership in Hamas, to imagine the Palestinian group being willing to make real compromises with the Israelis at the roundtable. Not saying it's not possible, but I just want to stress that I think it's going to be much more difficult, despite all of the hard work that we've seen from officials in Egypt and Qatar.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. With those insights, that is Giorgio Cafiero with Gulf State Analytics. We very much appreciate your time.
Thank you so much.